to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Michael Levitt. He is the founder and chief of Burnout Officer. He's a coach, consultant, a man of many titles. But before we get into who Michael is, can I call you Mike or Michael? What's better?
Mike or Michael works for me.
Okay. Before I get into all that, Michael, if you're watching us on the YouTube or Twitch, Google, one of the platforms right there, you're seeing what's in Michael's background. If you're listening to us, you're not going to see it. So bear with us for a second. He has a lot of goodies back there. He has the OCD. I probably have ADHD because I'm looking at basically all the figures he has too on the other side. And so the question I have to ask is going to be a hard-hitting question. Who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, that would be Batman, for sure. Ever since I was a little kid, my parents, let me watch the Batman TV series. I was able to meet Adam West and Burt Ward at a car convention show in 1976, I believe. It was 1976 in Detroit. And then ironically, 40 years later, I took my oldest daughter because they were doing a tour, and I was able to see Adam West and Burt Ward 40 years later at a comic book convention in Toronto. So it was an interesting bookend type of thing. And then, of course, Adam West passed away, I believe, the following year. So I was very fortunate and thrilled that we were both able to experience that. But yeah, I've loved the character for a long, long time.
Yeah, a normal person doing abnormal things. It's fantastic. Now you're a coach consultant, like we already kind of talked about. And one of the big questions I throw out to all the coaches, consultants, because I think I've had more of them on here, is what separates you from other coaches, consultants, mentors?
I think for me, especially in the lane that I work in burnout, is I had my own burnout journey, and it was pretty significant and catastrophic, quite frankly, for my life. And I learned what burnout was, how to identify it, and then most importantly, how to create my life where I wouldn't burn out. And unfortunately, I see way too many people, and it doesn't matter what sector it is. It could be healthcare, it could be legal, it could be real estate, it could be any industry. And based on the number of conferences that I've been speaking at over the last few years, it's pretty much every sector. People are burning out, and there's a lot of reasons why. And I, of course, know what it's like to be burned out, and I know how to get out of it and how to have a life where you're not burning out.
Now, if you're listening, you can tell that he's a podcast host because he's giving me these layups right there. He brought up the idea of his own burnout, and now he guided me into asking the question, can you tell us a little about your own burnout?
Yeah, back in 2007, I was hired as a healthcare executive just outside of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I'm a dual citizen. I grew up in the Detroit area and immigrated to Canada in 2004 with my former wife, and became a citizen in 2011. So I like to joke that I can vote and screw up two countries, but then I leave it at that because I don't tell people who I vote for because half the audience would hate my guts. So I don't want to get anybody upset with me. But in this role as a healthcare executive, I'd never worked in healthcare before. And I had a lot of startup experience in IT and finance and whatnot, but I'd never worked in healthcare. So there was a big learning curve for me. And I spent a ton of time working to get up to speed on building this healthcare clinic from ground zero to a running clinic that's still around today and doing quite well. But it took a toll on me because I was working extremely long hours, basically from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week for about 2 years. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And for executives and business owners, you tend to get the good parking spot, so you don't walk as much. So I wasn't getting in any exercise, and my nutrition plan basically was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, ordering through a microphone, driving around the corner, paying for it, and getting handed a brown bag. I'll let you figure out what kind of food I was eating.
Yeah.
And it all came to a crashing halt in May of 2009, where over a period of 369 days, the following happened to me. I had a heart attack that should have killed me. 17 weeks later, I lost my job during the Great Recession. Windsor's across the border from Detroit. The auto sector was on its last legs. The government had to bail them out. So not too many jobs were around. And then several months later, after not being able to find a job, my family car was repossessed. And then finally, in May of 2010, so a year later, our home was foreclosed. So heart attack, job loss, car repossession, home foreclosure, all in a year. And all of those things happened because I was burned out. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was making mistakes at work. I just was not a healthy, mentally or physically, human being. And very fortunate to have survived the heart attack, because my blockages that I had in my left anterior descending artery, which has a nickname, it's called the Widowmaker. Typically, when there's blockages in that artery and people have a heart attack, the survival rate is very low. But I did. And I realized that, okay, the way that I was going about life certainly wasn't going to be good for the long term. So I decided, all right, what do I need to do about this? And started to reinvent myself. And before I continue, if you're burned out right now, if anybody's listening right now or watching right now, and you think you're burned out, majority of people do not need to reinvent their life. I did, because I was just not living the best life. Most people just need to make a couple adjustments here and there, and it'll make a big difference to stop the burnout from proceeding.
So were you basically on cruise control, or were you not happy with your life? I mean, how do you look at or classify as burnout?
Burnout is a case of prolonged stress. You're fatigued, you're not sleeping well, you're just in this funk. You're literally, you just can't function to your fullest extent. Now, a lot of people will look at it and say, it kind of sounds like depression. And there's a lot of similarities between clinical depression and burnout. The biggest difference that we've seen thus far in the studies on burnout versus depression is when you're burned out, you can still function a little bit. If you're clinically depressed and deep into it, many times those people can't function. They can't get out of bed. They can't do anything. Where when you're burned out, somehow you're able to muster enough energy to at least, make an appearance at work or do some things. But every aspect of your life gets impacted, from sleep, your digestive system, cognitive ability, your relationships, you name it. It has such a nasty effect on people.
Now, at that point in time, before, I guess, the heart attack, how was your wife reacting to who you were at that time?
We had 3 small kids at the time, so we were kind of operating together, but not really. And she was working at the school and with 3 little kids, and I was working all the hours that I was working. I was physically there, but not really. I was focused so much on the work side of things and stressing out over a lot of things, because running a medical clinic is stressful. Healthcare is definitely one of those industries that's has a lot of stressful moments. And of course, during this pandemic, it's been amplified quite a bit, depending on, what part of healthcare you work in. But for me, a lot of it had to do with, I wanted to make sure that we were successful. So instead of delegating and spreading the work, I just took everything on and didn't delegate, and it didn't do me any favors by doing it that way.
I mean, it almost sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's someone that's living strictly only in the moment, only for the now. I mean, because if you were to look bigger picture, you'd realize the food was affecting you. You'd realize not to deal with too much of that stress, because it's not the end of the world. I mean, appreciating, I guess, the moment, but also understanding kind of the bigger picture. Is that kind of like a correlation, I guess, to the burnout you're going through?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Your ability to look forward or look at the big picture definitely gets impacted, because you're most of the time in a fog. You just, you can't make decisions. You have struggles trying to figure out what you want to do. Another thing that happened with me is I stopped doing things in life that I enjoyed doing, even though I was working long hours. And many of us get into that situation. I know in real estate, those are some long hours, because your clients want to see a property at a particular time when they're available. So it makes for very long days. But in those situations, you can still find windows of opportunity to do some things in life that you enjoy doing. And unfortunately, when you're working too many hours and you're not taking care of yourself, then those things get kicked to the curb, and that just starts compounding the problems that we face.
So you have the heart attack. You're, I'm assuming, put on some weight. I'm guessing too.
Yeah, when I was at the heart attack rate, yeah, I definitely had put on quite a bit of weight. A lot of that I have lost over the years, thankfully, and I'm off the heart medication too.
So, so bad health, bad weight, the job, lost the house. I mean, that's a big mountain to climb back up, or even being positive and getting out of the haze. I mean, what steps did you start to take, or how long did you stay in the haze before you allowed yourself to actually get out of it?
After the heart attack, I had 17 weeks off to recover. We had a short-term disability policy through work, and that was really beneficial for me because it allowed me to start doing some work on myself and going, okay, what do I need to do? And thankfully, the hospital that I went to, they did the heart procedure to open up the clogged artery. They had a program where they had me go through some physiotherapy, some mental therapy, working with a dietitian, all these things. So it helped me kind of say, okay, we got to change some things up a little bit. But I had a lot of downtime, which is something that I had not had in a very long time because I wasn't working and couldn't work. Basically, I was told, no, you're on disability. You're not supposed to work at all. So that found all kinds of different time to be able to start reflecting. And early on, someone told me, whatever you do, don't beat yourself up for what happened. It's done. It's over with. You're still here. Start focusing on taking care of you and prioritizing yourself first. And once I started to implement some of those things, I noticed that I started feeling better and life started to flow a little bit better. And then, of course, after recovering from the heart attack and the 17 weeks, the organization I was working for wanted to go in a different direction. So, they let me go. And, obviously that's kind of a kick. It's like, okay, wait a minute, I just come back from a cardiac event and now I don't have a job either during the Great Recession. That's awesome. But each one of those losses, the heart attack was obviously really significant. The job loss, was not a lot of fun. And, it's took me a long time to find a new job. It took me several months, lots of interviews. And again, during a recession, not a lot of opportunities out there.
Do you,
Go ahead.
do you think, because so you had the 17 weeks to work on some kind of mindset in your nutrition, but mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if you would have got the heart attack and the job loss at the same time, instead of allowing you kind of almost a cushion to get the mindset right with the heart attack, and then kind of have better capable of dealing with the job loss,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would have affected you worse? Do you think you would be in this point that you are if you would have gotten them all at the same time?
I think in all likelihood, it would have been worse because at least during those first 17 weeks, I
Yeah.
had insurance coverage for the heart medication that I was on,
Yeah.
which was over $1,000 a month. And of
Yeah.
course, after losing the job, that went away. So that created some significant financial challenges. Obviously, when you're on unemployment too, you're not getting the same amount of revenue.
Yeah.
So it was, and of course, let's toss in a recession. Very similar to some of the challenges that people have been facing during this pandemic as well. So this pandemic, not to segue into a different conversation, but
Yeah.
there were a lot of similarities to some of the challenges that I saw people having during this pandemic to what I had experienced. And initially, it triggered me. I'm like, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on at first. I'm like, why do I feel so anxious? What's going on? Yes, there's a pandemic. People are dying. All the things that we've had to endure with all of this. It was something different, and I finally was able to pinpoint. It's like, wait a minute, this is bringing back some past trauma of what I was experiencing during that time. And thankfully, I was able to recognize it. I'm like, okay, I know that is not happening to me now. I'm healthy. I have great income. Life is good. All the things in life. I mean, completely different than what it was like back then. but it gave me some empathy, quite frankly, for a lot of people that have been going through some similar situations. And I certainly hope no one's gone through what I went through. But that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I don't want people to go through that kind of stuff. They can prevent it if at all possible.
Well, I mean, just imagine if you didn't, I mean, go through that, you might not be here today. I mean, because it could have been even a longer burnout. So I mean, sometimes you need that big fall down to get back up and actually stand up fully instead of just basically burning out the rest of your life.
Yeah, if I didn't make the changes, I am fairly confident that I would not be here. I'm very thankful and fortunate that the heart attack didn't kill me. My cardiologist who put the stents in my artery, he told me, he said, statistically speaking, you should be dead right now.
Yeah.
And I told him, I guess he skipped bedside manner in medical school, and he laughed, but he was true. It was a very truthful statement, because statistically speaking, I shouldn't have, but I did. And I thought, okay, well, all right, let's rebuild from this. There's obviously a reason why I'm still here, so let's do something with it.
I mean, I think for all of us, I mean, this idea of knowing your own mortality. I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, this is going to go on forever. Yet, if you take a second to understand that it's not going to go on forever, are you happy in what you're doing? And can you really assess, are you in your own burnout right now and not even realizing it?
And I think a lot of people are doing that. I think the pandemic has created an opportunity for people to take a step back and review and think, okay, is this the path that I want to be on? Doesn't matter what the situation is. Might be in a work situation, could be relationship situation, could be where they live, all kinds of different things. This pandemic has been kind of a great reset for many people, and we've seen stories about the Great Resignation and all that. And I think that's a short-term situation. I think things will stabilize as time goes on, and work, as far as how that looks, remote, in person, a mixture of both. I think all of these things are going to be sorted out. And I think one of the things that causes burnout is prolonged stress. And it's stressful for a lot of organizations and their employees, because right now in many places they're not sure. They're like, well, we were working remotely. Do we want to stay doing that? Do we want to do this? So that uncertainty causes stress. And the only advice I give people on that is understand that we're kind of writing the rule book as we're playing the game, and to be flexible and understanding, and realize that we may need to adjust here and there, but be patient with it. Focus on the things that you can do, and don't spend time worrying about things that you can't.
Patience is a tough thing, I think, for a lot of us. Oh my
Of
gosh.
course.
Remember when you're a kid and you're patiently awaiting opening your presents and you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot sleep tonight. So excited. But patience is definitely a virtue. Now, let's go back to you, Michael. So you find another job. When did you start getting the idea of you're going to start your own business and be your own boss?
Yeah, I started back in a healthcare role when I found a new role up in Toronto, and my parents wanted to have me committed. They're saying, "Are you kidding me? You're going to work in healthcare, the field that nearly killed you?" And
Mhm.
I told them, I said, "I'm going to do something different this time. I'm going to establish boundaries of when I work and when I don't, and make sure that that's clearly articulated with my boss and me, and establish that guideline." And I did, and was successful. Worked in a lot of different settings. Worked on government committees, healthcare planning tables, all that kind of good stuff. Health system design, redesign of the healthcare system in Ontario, Canada, all of these things. So I was doing a lot, and I was on boards of directors, and you name it. But I had boundaries around it, and I knowing what burnout felt like, I made sure that I didn't overcommit myself. But as I was doing all this and being successful, I was looking at my colleagues, and I started to see an older version of me, and it
Mhm.
scared me. And I'm thinking, oh no, what in the world's going on? These people are doing the same thing that I did. So I started telling them, hey, look, you're going to want to implement some things in your life, because I wasn't at that point willing to share what had happened to me. So I really didn't share that until I released my book about it. That was the first time I actually went public with what had happened. Close friends and family knew, of course, but It wasn't something that I publicly declared. And I thought, okay, I'm telling these people to do it. And they're like, no, no, I'm just going to work through it. And I'm like, that's what I thought too. But I didn't realize that I was burned out when I was burned out. Everybody else in the world that knew me personally did, but I certainly didn't. So I thought, okay, I got to do something different about this. And I started researching burnout a little bit more. I knew a little bit about it because of my experience, but I wanted to research what was actually going on. What were some treatments? What were some ideas and all of that? And as I was doing that, it was a Pandora's box of, oh, wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. And I thought, okay, well, let me start writing about my experiences. Let's start doing that. And it took on a life of its own. And talking with good colleagues of mine, they said, you should probably do some consulting or coaching on this because your experience will help you be able to recognize where they are and help them kind of recognize where they are and implement some steps that's helped you that can share that. So I started doing that. And then from that, the people were telling me, well, share this, start getting out there. So I decided I'm going to write a book about my experience, kind of as a reminder to myself of what I've been through and where I am today. And also just to share with people, if you don't take care of yourself and prioritize you first, you could have your own year of worst case scenarios. And from there, launched my podcast and then started working with organizations and then started speaking on stages. And it's taken on a life of its own. I'm amazed at, how quickly it grew, and I always recommend, talk with people that have gone before you as far as launching a business or consulting or coaching. Talk with people that maybe are a couple years further along than you are. So it's still relatively fresh. If you go and talk to one of the top successful coaches in the world that's been doing it for years, yes, you're going to get good insight from them, but they may not remember all the details of where you are in your journey as far as being a coach or consultant.
How long did you, or when did you know that you were kind of out of the fire, or maybe still working to get out of the fire of who you used to be and kind of who you are now? I mean, because that has to be probably difficult of being on the podcast, presenting, because you can talk about who you were, that negative person, yet people want to know for their own selves, how do they get out of that position and how do they get to the better person? So that kind of
Yeah. I think for me, when I knew that I had made all the not all, but most of the changes that I wanted to, was about 3 years afterwards. I started getting my stride. So 2010 was the last, when I lost the house. Now, thankfully, we had found a place in Toronto and moved from that place. And ironically, we're getting ready to sell it, but then the bank decided to sell it for us. But thankful for them anyway. But ultimately, about 2 or 3 years after that, as I was getting into the swing of the career and doing all the things, and I knew that, okay, I'm living life. I'm enjoying my time with my kids. I'm doing things outside of work that I like because I had the time availability to do it because I'd, picked a job that would allow me to do that, even though, sometimes you have long commutes depending on if you're in LA or other parts where you got a long commute, you don't live in the city and you're making long drives, sometimes that can take it. But when I had those situations this time around, yeah, I made sure that I used that time for my own well-being, whether it was listening to sports talk radio or listening to my favorite music or whatever the case may be. Just you mix it up a little bit and just made sure that I enjoyed life. So it varies. Some people can get back to the swing of things and turn the corner sooner. Some people maybe a little bit longer. It really depends on why did they burn out. Is that because of just a specific work situation, or was it because of past behaviors, beliefs, thought patterns, habits, programming from when they were younger? There's all kinds of different things, that are into it. That's why I went and got my certificates in NLP and CBT therapy, because when I was working with individuals, I started recognizing it's like, okay, this is deeper than you're working 60 hours a week. This goes back to when you were 12 and you wanted to be a swimmer, but your parents said, no, we want you to play the piano. We don't want you to train for Olympic swimming events. We want you to play piano. And they carried that through all the way to their adult life and had struggles in certain things because they ended up picking things that they didn't want to do because they had that programming from, no, this is what my parents want for me. And it's like, no, what do you want for you? And guess what? You have the permission to do it because it's your life. So that's just one example of some of the things that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of different people on here that look at it differently, either reprogramming yourself, or I've had other people talk about the idea that it's almost like a upward spiral, that you constantly hit the same kind of topic again. Yet the next time you hit that topic, you're able to interact with it a lot better and kind of change the way you look at it a little bit better. But it still comes up. It's just you're a different person when you're looking at it.
Yeah, the experience and the clarity and previous experience definitely plays a big part. It's because when you're not burned out and you're not completely under stress and you pay attention to just your daily routine and how things are going, you can pick up on things a little bit easier if you're a little bit calmer and not dealing with the road rage of, and of course, during, stressful times. And of course, this pandemic has been very stressful for a lot of people. Sometimes we get agitated and irritated by even little things that really aren't a big deal. If you can learn to recognize your emotions, recognize these triggers that set you off and say, okay, why did that upset me? And figure out, okay, well, and it could be something just that reminds you of a past experience, a past encounter that you had with somebody. It's amazing. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, is a quote that I've heard recently. And history does kind of repeat, but I like the rhyming analogy because there's experiences that we face in life because of how we live our life and where we work and the things that we do, that you're going to have a situation that's going to remind you of a previous experience. Hopefully that was positive. If it was negative, either way, if you can recognize it and be able to kind of pause for a moment and go, okay, yes, this reminds me of that negative encounter I had with my ex or with, a former boss, but that's not the situation now, then it helps you kind of keep yourself in check and go, okay, I'm not going to let this overtake my day, maybe for this moment, but at least I can recognize it and then proceed accordingly.
Do you think there's anything that your wife or someone close to you could have told you back then before you had the heart attack that would have snapped you out of the burnout?
My hunch is no. And I had long conversations with my brother about this, and he tried. And other people, friends, were like, you got to take care of yourself. Even my former employer that let me go, they recognized that I wasn't the same person that they had hired as far as my personality. I was a lot more irritable. I just wasn't the same person. And they recognized that something was amiss, but I was just driven like, nope, this is my goal. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm going to finish this race even though half my leg is gone and the hospital's right there saying we can fix your leg. Like, no, I got to finish this race. It's that's a kind of a strange analogy, but sometimes when you're so focused on an outcome and you're not willing to be flexible about it, that's where sometimes you can get in trouble. And I see it a lot with people that are type A driven personalities, especially in the C-suite, but every level in an organization, but particularly those leaders that have rose through the ranks and now they're running this organization and they like, it has to be this way. And you have to be a little bit more flexible because we deal with these things called human beings, and we all have our nuances, we all have our challenges, we all have our strengths, we all have our areas of growth potential, and things change and evolve. And it makes it, if you have that recognition of being able to just take a breath and go, okay, what how can we deal with this? It makes things so much easier.
So is there anything, I mean, from all your years of helping people, right, that if, let's say, someone listening right now has someone that they love, that they feel that's going through this haze, this burnout, is there anything that you would suggest them try to do to get that person to self-realize what they're going through?
I think, yeah, and because it didn't work with me, but I know why it didn't work with me. Yes, there's definitely ways you can do it. Approaching them in a comforting way, I'm concerned about you. It's like you're spending your time. Is there anything that I can do to help? One of the exercises that I have people do is to literally track their time. What are they spending time on? And a good colleague of mine, actually, I've had two colleagues that have taught me this, but Virginia is one that she taught me this a couple years ago. Even though I've been doing this work for a long time, but she did it for me. She said, "Okay, let's look at your calendar." And I had on my calendar me time or self-care time, whatever, and that can be exercise, doing fun things I like doing, going to concerts, sporting events, whatever. That's me time. That's beneficial for me. She said, "I want you to color code that." So if you can, and if you're colorblind, this is not a great exercise. But if you're not, I always have to frame that because I've worked with people that I know people that are colorblind. So they say, use symbols, use a diamond or a star or something like that. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to differentiate your me time or your self care time from everything else, and utilize your favorite color if you color code that, because your brain is naturally inclined to notice your favorite color. You'll pick it out. If you saw a spectrum, your eyes are going to gravitate towards your favorite color. So the reason why you do that is you can take a step back and look at your calendar. If it's a digital calendar or even a paper one, you use a highlighter, and you can actually squint. You don't have to look at the text. You just look, and if you don't see enough of your favorite color, which is in my case is blue, if you don't see enough of your favorite color, that tells you that you didn't spend enough time on that day or that week on you. Now, what you can do is you can look back for a couple of weeks and see how you've been doing, or you can look forward a couple of weeks and see. If you don't see enough of the color, you can make some adjustments. Work-life balance is, there's an author that wrote a book about that. It's the work-life balance myth. You cannot have balance. It's like balancing an egg. It's just not going to work. There's a harmony about life. There's going to be busier times and less busier times. There's going to be seasons. Let's say you're working in America's finest city, for example, and you do work for the Padres during the season. Well, season's over now, so you're not working as much as you would be, in the spring and the summer. So you have to adjust accordingly on that. Same thing in any profession. My first career was in accounting. I worked for a CPA firm. Tax season, I still have this feeling of relief on April 16th, even though I haven't worked in that industry for a long time. April 16th is still a wonderful day. It's like, feels good, even though, again, I haven't worked in it forever. But during tax season, you're working some insane hours. So it's understanding that there's going to be some seasons and things that are going to be a little more taxing, pardon the pun, than others. And you have to just adjust accordingly, realizing, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, getting the right foods, getting the right amount of rest, so I can be my best when I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And when you do that, it makes it easier. So, the long-winded answer to your question is just have your loved one or friend and just kind of write down how they're spending their time. And if you see some opportunities where, maybe they could toss in, an hour or half an hour coffee date with their friend or something, start adding those things back. Because my hunch is if they're burned out or really stressed out, they're not doing those things. And that's so critically important for them to do things in life that they enjoy doing.
And if you need something to enjoy doing, you can watch the San Diego Padres ideally win a World Series one day.
Well, you got the no hitter this year.
We did get the no hitter this year, so that's one positive.
Yeah, and you've got a brand new manager, and a core team, and that team to the north has lost some talent. So
there's definitely possibilities. If anyone doesn't know, I'm a huge Padre fan. I love the Padres. That's why I have all this stuff in the videos, Padre stuff. Anyways, if someone's listening right now and they did the exercise you talked about. They put their calendar together and they realized they don't have their favorite color. They don't have enough of their favorite color on their actual calendar.
Mhm.
What's the best way of them reaching out to you, going to your podcast, finding more information, classes, whatever you else might offer?
Yeah, breakfastleadership.com is probably the best place to find me. I'm on most of social media channels as well. Just look on Breakfast Leadership or Be Fast Leadership, so the letter B and then Fast Leadership. But if you use a Google search and just look up Breakfast Leadership, you'll find me on all the podcast channels, my website. On the website, I've got some resources and different things, and happy to have a conversation with people and, send them some resources, no obligation or anything like that to help them kind of guide through and, stop burnout in its tracks, because having had it, it's not something that I would ever want anybody to go through.
I mean, if you're listening right now and you have, any kind of thoughts, any kind of, you're thinking that might be you, go to Michael, go to the Breakfast Leadership Network. Take the chance right now. It's so easy from one day, go to the next day and the next day and the next day. I've been there. I never had a heart attack, but I've been in the situations where I woke up one day and I realized I was in the construction field before I got into real estate, and I would eat on the go. And I saw my weight just go up, but you don't realize it because one day to the next day until you actually jump on a scale. And I jumped on the scale and I go, that machine's wrong. That's not how much I weigh. But then you start seeing yourself in the mirror. You start seeing basically everything that's going wrong, and it can slowly build up just like an avalanche. So stop it now. Take the chance. If you have any kind of thought, do the calendar thing, do the color. Very simple, very easy. Even if you're not even sure that you might do the calendar thing, it'll only take you a couple of minutes. And if you are questioning it, go to the Breakfast Leadership Club. Thank you. I appreciate you, Michael, for being here. Everyone, please subscribe. Please listen. Go find Michael. Thanks, everyone. On to the next one.